Welcome to LVT-SHOWBIZ, the place to get the fastest, highest quality, most interesting updates and new perspectives on Chinese entertainment. Thanks for watching LVT-SHOWBIZ. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share and subscribe to stay tuned for more exciting stories from the world of Chinese celebrities. Leave your thoughts in the comments, we'd love to hear from you.
The lights were perfect that night. Every angle, every reflection, every carefully curated detail of the grand stage at Vogue Shanghai seemed designed to celebrate beauty, success, and the illusion of control. Cameras flashed like a sea of stars, capturing smiles that had been rehearsed 1,000 times. And right at the center of it all stood Xu Kai and Tan Songyun side by side, as if they belonged to that flawless world. For a fleeting moment, everything felt untouched, almost unreal. But sometimes it only takes a single second for perfection to fracture. One step, one slip, and suddenly the entire atmosphere shifted. The laughter faded, the music lost its rhythm, and what remained was something raw, something unguarded. In that instant, as Tan Songyun lost her footing, the night stopped being a show. It became a story. And what unfolded next was not scripted, not polished, not controlled. It was a moment that revealed more than any performance ever could. Because when Xu Kai moved, when his voice broke through the silence, the world didn't just witness an accident. It witnessed something far deeper, something that would echo long after the lights dimmed. At first, no one quite understood what had happened. The fall itself was quick, almost too quick for the eye to fully process. But the reaction that followed lingered, stretching time in a way that made every second feel heavier. Xu Kai froze for the briefest heartbeat, as if reality needed a moment to catch up with him. And then instinct took over. He moved without hesitation, without awareness of the cameras, without concern for anything beyond the person in front of him. It was not the movement of a performer responding to a situation. It was the reaction of someone who felt something real, something urgent. When he reached her, the noise of the crowd seemed to dissolve into silence. His voice, usually steady and composed, carried a tremor that could not be hidden. He called her name once, then again, softer, as if afraid that even the sound might break something fragile. Those who watched closely could see it in his eyes, that unmistakable flicker of fear. Not dramatic, not exaggerated, but quiet and deeply human. And perhaps that was what made it so powerful. It did not feel like a moment meant for an audience. It felt like something the audience was never supposed to see. As staff and medical personnel approached, there was a subtle tension in the air. Everything was handled with care, with professionalism, yet there was an unspoken awareness that something unusual had just occurred. Xu Kai did not step back immediately. He stayed close, his presence steady, almost protective, as if leaving even for a moment was not an option. It was a small detail, but in moments like these, small details become everything. When Tan Songyun began to respond, even slightly, the shift was immediate. The tension softened, replaced by a quiet relief that did not need to be announced. Xu Kai exhaled, the kind of breath that comes after holding something in for too long. He did not make a grand gesture, did not draw attention to himself. Instead, he remained composed, though the traces of what had just passed still lingered in the way he looked at her. What the public saw that night was already enough to spark countless discussions. Clips spread quickly, replayed from different angles, analysed frame by frame. People spoke about the way he moved, the way his voice changed, the way his expression shifted in those few critical seconds. But what truly deepened the story happened away from the spotlight, in the quieter moments that followed. Behind the scenes, where the cameras no longer dictated the narrative, the atmosphere was calmer, but still heavy with concern. Tan Songyun was attended to carefully, her condition assessed with reassurance. It was not serious, but The emotional weight of the incident lingered. Xu Kai remained nearby, not as a public figure fulfilling an expected role, but as someone who simply chose not to leave. There was no announcement, no staged interaction, just a quiet presence that spoke more than words ever could. Later, when the official statements confirmed that she was recovering well, the public found comfort in the reassurance. Yet, it was the absence of spectacle that stood out. Xu Kai did not turn the moment into a statement, did not address it with elaborate explanations. Instead, he stepped back from the noise, allowing time and silence to settle what words might complicate. In the days that followed, small glimpses began to surface. Nothing dramatic, nothing overt. A quiet visit, a moment captured unintentionally, the kind of details that do not demand attention, yet inevitably draw it. People noticed, not because they were told to notice, but because the consistency of those actions created a pattern that was difficult to ignore. Tan Songyun's return to public appearances carried a sense of calm reassurance. She smiled, spoke with ease, and moved forward with her schedule. Yet there was a subtle difference in how moments were perceived. When their paths crossed again, even briefly, there was an understanding in their interactions that felt more grounded, less performative. A glance held a little longer, a nod that carried more meaning than before. Speculation naturally followed. Questions arose, theories formed, discussions spread across platforms. But what made this story endure was not confirmation or denial. It was the space in between. The space where people could interpret, could feel, could connect the dots in their own way. Because sometimes the most compelling stories are not the ones that are clearly defined, but the ones that leave room for belief. In an interview weeks later, when Xu Kai was asked about that night, his response was simple. He did not elaborate, did not dramatize. He spoke with a quiet honesty that reflected the same authenticity people had witnessed before. It was not about explaining what happened, but about acknowledging what was felt. And that distinction made all the difference. Tan Songyun, when faced with similar questions, responded with warmth and grace. Her words were gentle, her tone steady, yet there was a depth to her expression that suggested something beyond casual appreciation. It was not a declaration, but it did not need to be, because by then, the story had already taken shape in the minds of those who followed it. What began as a brief moment of imbalance became something far more significant, not because of the fall itself, but because of what it revealed. It showed that even within a world defined by performance, there are moments that cannot be rehearsed, moments that break through the surface and remind everyone watching that, behind every image, every role, every expectation, there is something real. And perhaps that is why, long after the event, people still return to that clip. Not to analyze it again, but to feel it again. To revisit that instant where everything paused, where emotion replaced performance, where a single reaction carried more weight than any scripted scene. So, was it just an accident? Or was it a moment that allowed something true to be seen, even if only for a few seconds? The answer may never be clearly defined, but maybe that is exactly why it continues to resonate. If this story moved you, if you felt even a fraction of what that moment carried, then you already understand why it matters. Thank you for spending this time with us, for seeing beyond the surface and into the quiet spaces where the real stories live. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to LVT-SHOWBIZ, because sometimes the most powerful stories are not the loudest ones, but the ones that stay with you long after they end.